All right, great. Hi, everybody. It's Mike Chang, and you're here with the Chang Collective. I'm here today with a very esteemed slash honored guest. This is my father, Joseph Chang.
Hello.
Hi, Joseph. Good to see you.
Hi.
Hi, Dad. All right, so we're here today to discuss the impending tariffs that are coming around the corner. My dad has a very distinct and specific history and background that gives him an expert overview, and he'll serve as a great subject matter expert for this field. So, Dad, if you could tell me a little bit more, and I'm going to call you Mr. Chang from this point forward. Mr. Chang, if you could give me a little bit more background as to your history and what puts you in a position to be able to have a meaningful perspective on what's going on with tariffs and how that's going to impact.
For the past 50 years, when I finished college, I worked for one of the largest commodity trading companies in the world, Cargill. And I was handling their cotton desk, basically one of the major commodities in the field. Of course, it involved a lot of international trade. Many imports and exports. We, United States, as a major producer of cotton, of all the agricultural products, we're major exporters. But in the meantime, we're also major importers because if people know the business, knows it is impossible for any one country to produce everything the industry needs. Mm-hmm. Even you come down to a teeny-weeny little small field of cotton, no country, even as big as the United States, can you produce everything. Mm-hmm. Like cotton. For example, if you wear a nice shirt, you think that's a wonderful shirt or bed sheets. However, people will tell you, oh, this has come from Egyptian, long stable. That implies it's a fancy, long fiber. However, if you look at some very comfy pajamas, very soft, and yet kind of not shiny. Those requires very short fibers produced in Pakistan or in India. So we, United States, California produces wonderful fibers. Tennessee, Carolinas produce. So each region produces different products. Mm-hmm. Then in the grand view, the international trade has to be global.
Right.
Very difficult for one country to say, I produce everything. So no one can be a net exporter.
Right.
And the same logic, no one can say, oh, I depend solely on import, because you definitely produce something other country needs.
Right. Right, and so then, in light of what we're talking about now, and the tariffs that are supposedly going into effect tomorrow, what impacts do you think that's going to have, or what do you think the strategy or the play is? Do you think there's a play, or is it just strictly as he's laid it out in terms of a means with marginal pain and growth in the beginning, and then it'll be ultimately good for the United States?
First of all, you should look at it. Who pays the tariff?
The consumers, right?
People always say, oh, the exporters pay the tariff. You cannot say it's incorrect. It's a partially correct, mm-hmm. But it's only a small part. For those people, if you say Toyota, Honda, hey, sorry, you are the exporter, but also you acting as importer. Mm-hmm. So Toyotas, Hondas have their own companies in United States.
Right.
So they acting as not only as exporter and also acting as importer. They're greedy. They want to have everything.
Both sides,
so,
right.
So now you get punished because you will bear the burden of the tariff because the tariff is paid by importers, not by exporters.
Right.
It's paid by the party who bring the merchandise into United States,
Got it.
not the party who made the products.
Right. So their basis is exactly the same potentially. It's
No,
just the people who are bringing it in.
However, only teeny-weeny portion of the international trade is like a Toyota, Honda. Those are gigantic international firms. Even a big company like Walmart. Does Walmart pay, they make the supplier pay all the duties? No. Walmart, as an importer, has to pay. Even though 60%, think about it, 60% of the products in Walmart, you walk in, the entire store, 60% is made in one country from China. But China pays nothing. Walmart pays everything. Same thing. Ralph Lauren. Who pays the duty for the wonderful shirts you wear? No. The shirt may be made in Bangladesh or made in Vietnam, but the duty is paid by Ralph Lauren. Same thing for Nike.
Right.
Hey, Nike has factories everywhere, in Thailand, in Cambodia, in Taiwan, but the duty is paid not by those gigantic manufacturing companies. Another one even bigger, which is Apple. We buy Apple phone. Majority Apple phone is made in China. There is a factory in Changzhou. Have 500,000 workers in one location.
It's bigger than a city.
500,000.
There's 350,000 people in
Can you
Rockland
imagine?
County,
You say,
so
oh,
it's bigger than all of Rockland.
I will bring the manufacturing back to United States. Excuse me. How do you assemble a factory instantly in United States for 500,000 workers? You need time. You need years of development of the structure.
Yeah, the infrastructure that surrounds that, right?
So, and then secondly, if you understand a duty is paid by the importers. Secondly, you will say, who will be affected the most? Who will affect?
The consumers.
I have a 25%. No, the people has logic will say, whoever has a trade with the United States, whoever export to America will be the victim. The ones that don't have nothing to do with the U.S. will not be affected. So therefore, you will say, you can assume all the enemies of this country will not be affected. Does Russia, does Iran, does North Korea be affected by the tariff? No, they have nothing. We don't buy anything from them anyway. So we don't have, all our enemies, they don't get affected. But our friend, the biggest one is Canada. The second biggest one is Mexico. It will be affected. Of course, now, the third one is China. If they are friend or not friend, nowadays nobody knows how to define. But still, they're not really enemies. Then you come to the fourth one, is the European Union. In India and Japan, they all are our friends, our allies. They will be affected.
So do you think it's warranted though, in terms of the notion of there being a tariff for those partner states? Do you think that they are taking advantage of us, and that we need to renegotiate those terms, or do you think that it's part of a separate conversation and something else that's bigger and outside of the realm of?
Actually, when people often criticize the government policies. But if you think carefully, President Trump may not be wrong on one respect, is that we, United States, have been very generous to all these countries. We truly, as a nation, have open market. So you cannot say, the Democrats and Republicans have a different policy. In reality, ever since World War II, since 1945, this wonderful country of ours are the most generous to everyone. The reason, but on the other hand, are we being taken advantage of? That is a very subjective statement.
Right.
Let's face it, we are not fools. You think we're so foolish? We just let people constantly take advantage of us? We do it. We have our motives as well. Because after World War II, we said, why we have a constantly war? First World War I, World War II. It's because the interest always have a conflict of interest. And usually economic conflict leads to more intense conflict. Maybe even in the end leads to war. So we said we should integrate the world into one. And fortunately, in the 1940s, the 50s, we can afford it. Everybody is ravaged by war. We are the only guy lucky. We didn't suffer any, except that we fought on other people's land, not on our soil. So we said, all right, we can afford to open our market, give you a chance. We let Germany to recoup. Right after war, Germany rebuilt. We let Japan to come in. We help them to recover. We let many countries. We even allowed China to develop, allow them to get into the WTO. All these, we have our selfish motive. We said, this is good for us if you guys are not hungry and they're always fighting. But on the other hand, if you look at a different angle, is it 100% even? No. The French don't let people they take any agricultural products. They protect the market. Japan, their rice is 700% import duty. but they want to protect their the rice farmers. But on the other hand, that we do enjoy the fruit of generosity is that our consumers get the cheapest products. And in exchange, I hate to say, we print the money.
Exactly. So it ties right back to it.
Only thing is, now we realize we can no longer afford to be as generous as we have been. So President Trump actually is, even if he is not a president, some other future president have to put a stop. Said, enough. We are no longer able to be as generous as we used to be. We have to level the playing field.
Got
So
it.
that is what. So people may criticize him. Oh, you do this, you do that. Yeah, but if you don't do that, you cannot. This policy, the past policy, cannot continue.
Got it. So it's unsustainable. The change was necessary. So we're in agreement with the notion of there having to be tariffs. It's going to suck. How long is it going to suck for?
That is a problem. That that it is not as short as people perceive. That the impact is not as soft as people will present to the population. we will all have to sacrifice.
Right. And it's a function of all the imported goods. Not only is the importers are paying it, but they're just going to pass that same increase to the consumers. Right.
Not only that, you will have a lot more consequences. Because first of all, the logic is people use this logic to convince the population to endure the pain, saying, "Oh, I will bring back manufacturing to the United States." Excuse me. It took 1945 to this year, 2025. How many years?
80, yeah.
80 years. For all these wonderful, United States was the preeminent manufacturing center. We produced tens of thousands of ships and the tanks during World War II that literally overwhelmed the Nazis, overwhelmed the Japanese. We won the war because our capacity.
Right.
But what happened to all this?
We outsourced it for the last 20 years, right?
Yeah.
So
now, according to the report, our shipyard can only produce 3 warships, while our adversary, such as China, is producing 265 ships a year.
right. I mean, I think they're on path to become the largest navy.
So,
If they have already done so.
So this is
actually.
dangerous for
Between
us.
that
We
and
cannot. But on the other hand,
national security component.
We have to be realistic. We are blessed. We have a good life.
Mm-hmm.
This good life you had to pay the price. If you look at it this way, Vietnam, if you have a factory in Vietnam, the guy get paid for $2,000 a year,
Right.
or $4,000 a year.
Annual salary.
And then they make a shirt, make underwear, make a socks for you. Do you think you can get the socks and the underwears at the same cost if we bring those manufacturing back to America?
Definitely not at the same price. I mean, how much higher do you think it'll be in terms of the percentages? Like 25% more, no, 40, even more than that. I was like, look, if your average salary, minimum wage is at $17, right? I was like, you're definitely pushing far, far beyond.
So that if you don't have a global high tax right now, and they only say, I tax China, I tax the Vietnam, they just move factories from one to another place. Because these factories are very easy to
Plug and play.
to move. Yeah. And then ends up that you just play the cat and mouse games. Then, for example, in his first term, in 2019, we imposed 10 or 20% duties on all Chinese products. It doesn't affect China at all. If you look at the trade deficit, and our trade deficit after 5 years or 8 years, instead of shrink with all these tariffs, it doubled. It doesn't change.
So it's not necessarily
and worse. And all these manufacturings supposed to be in China get hurt are moved to Vietnam, to Cambodia, to Bangladesh. You go to the department store, you see more underwear, the shirts made in Bangladesh. But if you are a little bit knowledgeable, if you study a little bit further, are they really made in these countries?
Or just assembled?
Or only assembled in these countries? People like in my field, in cotton, I can share with you. Processing of cotton is not as simple as people think. You get it, you process it, you get from a picking, from the field. That's a farming. It's a mechanized. Actually, it's an industry. It's not as labor laborers as you think. You don't need any labor, especially if you go to today's major producers like America, like China. No labor is involved. Even in China, the biggest producing region for them is in Xinjiang. People say, "Oh, you have a slave labor." Sometimes the slave actually is a combine. It's a machine. There is no. There are very few people
that are just like picking.
Nobody.
Right. It's not efficient.
It's not economical. The machines can do much better, much efficient, less costly for the operator. So they're all mechanized, and then, but that's only the first step. Which requires major capital investment. Second step again requires major capital investment. They call it spinning. This is goes through about 15 different process. You are knowledgeable.
I know. Yeah.
15 different process. And even a small factory requires literally $500 million, $1 billion investment. It's not a small investment. And it usually takes 7 to 8 years to get your money back. If you build a new factory, it's a major investment. I have to make money for 7 to 10 years in order to get my money back. And then on the 11th, 12th year, now that's gravy. But in today's political environment, with all these uncertainties and all very moody decision-making process, do you think people will be have enough courage to say, "Oh, I'm going to make a major investment, take 7 years to get my money back. But my money just get in, maybe next year, the policy change, I lose everything."
Everything's gone.
So I cannot have a very shifty decision-making process. I need a very stable hand in the monetary or trade policies.
So the amount of volatility that President Trump introduces into the economic landscape is, even though the notion of what he's talking about is something that needs to happen, without providing that stable basis for people to be able to feel comfortable to invest in long term, nor I don't know that they're giving additional support to help identify and reinvigorate those lost production capacities, i.e., are they supporting the development of not just high-tech chips, for example, but are they encouraging the reinvestment in basic manufacturing for garments, for example? I don't know how they're planning on addressing it, but I know that China helps subsidize a lot of the industries to help derive growth. I don't know necessarily that the U.S. has got a clear plan or format laid out. Maybe you know a little bit better, but I think that's a challenge. And I know that from a construction and new development perspective, we're encountering significant hits because people have already started initially, gotten, say, an assemblage of property, started planning to do the build. But now, because of the debt service being so high, at the higher rates that they're at now, plus the notion of there being an increase in the cost of goods and the delay in the cost of goods being delivered, because there's going to necessarily be a little bit more slow because they're going to have to process through customs a little bit more, that they're giving up on these new projects without even starting. Like they're getting stalled already. That's going to have negative impacts across general marketplaces just because there's now inventory that banks have to take over and then sell pennies on the dollar with. That's going to devalue surrounding real estate.
You look at it
so.
in your even for your real estate industry. Mm-hmm. You already the first one get hit was the steel.
Yeah, huge, huge.
Nobody else get hit yet. The steel already get hit global 25%.
Yeah,
and then we're telling we have a trade war with Canada, and all of a sudden it's a lumber. I don't need your lumber. I want my lumber. Hey, 25%.
Yeah, and deforestation in the EPA.
So you have a 25% of lumber. You have a 25% of steel.
What are you going to build with?
Excuse me. Now you say 25% on everything, including how about the
screws, nails,
the construction equipment,
the actual equipment themselves.
All the construction equipment used to be made in United States. Now many of them actually in Korea or in Japan. So now they got the construction equipment. So if you think about it, And on top of that, illegal immigrants are being blocked.
Right. That's the actual workforce, right? Like the laborers. Where are you going to get in terms of trade laborers that are going to execute?
So now you got no cheap labor, no cheap steel, no cheap lumber, no cheap equipment. So the only thing you say, oh, I'm not affected in the land. Hey, but if people
can't build on it, then it's not going to be worth less.
People, investors, would worry, where should I put my asset?
It's not in equities anymore, huh? You don't
So
think
then
equities are
if
safe?
I don't put the money in equities, I may want to put the money in land. So basically, literally, everything points to inflationary pressure.
Right.
But that is no good.
That's going to lead us.
That's very bad for everybody.
Right. So if we hit inflationary marks, then do you think that, forecasts are starting to look a little bit more bleak in terms of the expectations for oncoming recession? Do you feel also the same, or what are the actions that you're taking to insulate yourself and your business?
But I think people, right? Any person in business should be realistic and logical. If you say, if the United States, the policy is, we want to have a fair trade. That's a fair trade is a very nice name. Means you give me high duty, I'll give you high duty. That's fair. So, but past is that you give me high duty, you have a high duty, I have low duty. So then my thing is the cheap. So that's why people always want to come to, even the developing country people always want to come to America to shop. In our neighborhood, the Woodbury Common, is full of developing country people. They come here, oh, America has everything cheap. But no more. We don't want an unfair trade. So if we don't want an unfair trade, so you will affect a lot of things, not just the things you can see. For example, if today you say to Japan, to England, to China, these are the three countries holding the most of our treasury bills. And we say, you three, you are taking advantage of me. You pay 25%. And they said, okay, I did. In the past, I have money. I made money from you. So I don't know where to put all this money. So I go back to buy the treasury, which is that's natural. Because if you let me to make money, that you in your terms say, you let me to take advantage of you, which is you willing to let me take advantage of you. So I made a lot of money. But the very interesting fact of life is, if I made a lot of money, if I only made $2, easy, I spend it. But if I made it $200 billion, where do? I cannot eat it. I have to hide it. So where do I hide it? I buy U.S. treasuries. I buy U.S. treasury, put in the Federal Reserve. That's the only place can hold 200 billion, 500 billion. Even my local bank cannot handle it.
I mean, is there a possibility that these countries that have high positions in T-bills can impact the fiscal policy because everything is tied to it?
No, it's natural, because now basically we're telling them, we're not allowing you to take advantage anymore. So even if you want to, you don't have the money. Right? If I don't allow the UK, we don't allow Japan, we don't allow China to take advantage of us, they will not have money to buy our treasuries. So the treasury will be less held by foreigners,
which ultimately will lower the costs, right?
Then the interest rates will be affected.
Right, which is in a better way. So the inflation will go up for a little bit. Interest rates should theoretically go down.
Right, and then also, if you have that policy, then some of the central banks, every central bank will say, well, in the old days, I always put money in U.S. Treasury. Now, I still want to put money in U.S. Treasury. But instead of holding 80% U.S. Treasury, I diversify. I hold a 60% U.S. Treasury. Reduce a little bit. But if every country reduces a little bit,
It's a big amount. Yeah.
the big trouble. That's why you can see why the gold price went up crazy.
Right.
That's why gold all of a sudden from 2,000 to 3,000.
That's a huge increase. Exactly.
People are not stupid.
Volatility, right?
You can understand, right? So, and then if a U.S. dollar, if the gold goes up so much, what that
Silver's
implies?
starting to climb too.
What that implies? That means used to be a 2,000 U.S. dollar can buy an ounce of gold.
Yeah. Costco.
Now you need a $3,000 to buy gold. That means U.S. dollar purchasing power
Shooting down.
down. That indirectly basically says your inflation
It's going up.
is up. Now, if inflation go up, leads to what? Usually corporation, the companies cannot make money as much as in the past,
Right.
right?
And as a result, they're freezing on it in terms of their activities and their actions.
If the Costco make less, Walmart make less, the GE make less, the Ford Motor makes less, what does that mean? Their stock will go low.
Yeah, equities are going to be in trouble.
Your earning is down. Immediately it will be reflected in your stock valuation. So now, trouble. If your stock valuation go down, your 401k will go down. Even though
retirements
it had nothing to do with me. But you and me, our 401k, our IRA, they're all in the equities. They will go down. All of a sudden, you get nervous. I used to own $10 in the 401k. Now I only own
Six.
Yeah. I tell my wife, don't buy that refrigerator. Or when you don't buy,
It doesn't get recirculated back in the system.
Economy shrinks.
And
That means what?
recession. You're right.
Trouble. So and then indirectly, one of the biggest consumption is housing.
Right. Yeah. It's absolutely
Unfortunately,
a huge
when
component.
people have money, they buy a house.
First things
If
first.
people are not so sure, they say, I just hunker down, I rent for a few more years.
So housing is going to be impacted. It's going to slow down housing.
But that's the
new
vicious
construction,
cycle.
all of those pieces.
And hopefully it not come to tuition.
But likely, if you were a betting man, would you anticipate that it would be the case? And at what point does it then turn around? Because there's always the other part of the story, right? You get to
I have the
recession.
best part
Is
of the
that
story.
the end? Exactly. Give me some positives.
Before I'm ending this chat, you know what's the best part?
What?
I have a confidence, and I pray. I hope our president, he has proven himself to be a very smart guy.
Right.
I don't want to judge him by his
Demeanor.
demeanor or
Bedside manner.
or he had his useful days how he lived his life.
Right.
However, I respect him as a smart businessman.
Mm-hmm.
And he is a very sharp negotiator.
Oh, absolutely.
I hope he just used that 25% as a negotiating tactic, saying that in our common with our expression, he asked for the moon.
Yeah, falls in the stars.
And
Absolutely.
then you ask him crazy, and then I'm acting crazy. And deep down, he's not crazy. So he said, you just scare you. And then you just, if I have you, I'll give you 15. I'll give you 10. So in a sense, he's using this tactic. If that's the way he negotiated, and in the end, reach a truly fair trade. Basically,
What do we
achieve-
define that truly fair trade? And again, it's industry specific, but typically
fair trade is that if I charge you 6% duty on rice,
reciprocal
import,
6%
please, Japan, you charge me 6% duty
on cotton.
on my rice.
Oh, same. So it's on
Right?
priority
on
for each
my
piece.
rice. And China, I allow your TikTok to come to my country. You should allow my Facebook into your country. Why? That TikTok can be operated in America. Facebook cannot be operated in China. Equal. That actually, I agree. It's fair. You and me travel to Asia very often. You will see. You say, how come my Google don't work as good? Because they're discriminating against us. And yet we can use their internet in America, no problem. That's because it's unfair trade.
Makes sense.
So that at least if you can demand, but same thing from the Philippines, that if we want to ship the car to Philippines, then it's okay. But if we ship the agro product to Philippines, say no. I have to protect my industry. You can't. Everybody has to equal. I hope that's what Donald Trump is achieve.
So, I mean, say we just to walk down this and play devil's advocate, if we actually do go down and we do establish free trade, quote unquote, and we get to the point where it's equal parity, where you know that there's a smaller demand or smaller supply of manufacturing that can come out of Japanese rice products, the base price will still go up, and it'll still be different than what we're seeing in terms of the mass availability of American short grain rice. Then what happens then in terms of controls and protection in terms of penetration? For example, we talk BYD, we talk about the notion of far more efficient creation of electric vehicles out of China. If we made it equal, they would take over the market in days, right?
Yes.
And so if that's the case, and they take over in days, there becomes a dependency, right? So national security
actually,
perspectives.
That Michael, I have a feeling we underestimated ourselves. United States actually is way ahead of others in the international environment. We have to realize demand for manufacturing is the industry of the past. Just like 500 years ago, you only have farming. So you say, oh, I need to protect my farmer. Yes, you need to protect your farmer. But 500 years ago, when Great Britain invented the steam engine, it's more important you industrialize than you kept the farming going. If you look at it, all the developing countries now, they're farmers, but they don't have an industry. But like for 500 years, the West had industry. So our people in the West, you should not live in the past. We have to realize the days of manufacturing is gradually or very fast being replaced by the digitalized society, which is the service industry. So we should not look at it and say, we need to protect our manufacturing. Manufacturing, we don't want the manufacturing. Who wants the manufacturing?
More pollution, more headache, more human capital.
I'm from Asia. So I have a lot of friends, my family members in manufacturing. Do you know, for $100 sneaker, how much is the manufacturing?
$23.
Hey, you're pretty good. About
like,
$18. $18.
Well, with the tax and the tariff, now, $23.
$100 sneaker, $18 is manufacturing. So I work like a dog. I'm getting $18. But the other $82 is made by the designing, marketing, retailing. This is done in America. iPhone, I'm talking about 500,000 people working in a place called Zhengzhou. You Google it, Zhengzhou, right? By Foxconn. he only makes each phone, that company only makes $6. He makes $6 making assemble the phone, but the components come from everywhere. So on the book, he say he sells you a $200 phone,
1,005.
but he only makes $6, and yet you bring to America, Apple makes how much? So the Apple basically pays $200 plus for a phone, which he never make. But he lived like a glorious life. They have the highest real estate price in the world, in California. It happens, my cousin got lucky 50 years ago. He moved to Mountain View. The Mountain View, all of a sudden, the real estate goes crazy. But 50 years ago, he bought a mountain. Michael, that's his uncle. Michael went to his uncle's place. He has a whole mountain for sale.
Yeah.
But the people are reaping the tremendous benefit. Service industry, that's where what we want. Why we want to, we cannot have everything. But as long as we are globalized, we want the service industry.
So we think that the tariffs are actually not what they seem at face value in terms of isolationist and action, but in fact, a means for us to become even more globally integrated.
Yeah, Michael's wife Lisa, she's a designer, head designer for the Ann Taylor, right?
No,
so she should know.
New York company.
Yeah, she should know. She went to Asia, went to Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, and he sold us the beautiful clothes for $500. He paid them maybe around less than $100. But do we want the $100 business? We don't want them.
So you think we should still keep on specializing, but there should be a certain minimum standard that they should have in terms of self-reliance and ability to provide. Sure, because your dependency then becomes heavily on another foreign entity, right? So for your abilities to get, and again, we don't need the breadth of clothing, but what I'm talking about is fundamental key services, things like at some point, the iPhone is a major component in terms of the global economy and how business is conducted and how everyday lives are impacted, right? Yeah. So having control on the flow of that stuff, is it something that we need to protect domestically? And do you think it's a matter of security?
If people use a national security issue, which you and me are not expert.
No,
because if
I got some guys that will
geopolitics, people say, "Oh, I want to keep this, didn't keep that." Then you have to pay a price to keep this and keep that.
And that's the government should be paying that price, right? So the activity and the involvement, laissez-faire government versus their stronger hand in involvement with everyday aspects and or the release of state powers with regards to all the things, the Department of Ed, all the et ceteras. Thoughts on the role federal government should play in the execution and involvement in the greater economies?
I know what your question lead to.
Yeah.
It's basically, because we all know this, we can feel a sense of envy of this administration. They feel that, the other countries are subsidizing a lot of industry. We should do the same. Many countries have trade policies, such as what industry I should give money to.
Right.
We should subsidize also.
Right. So we used to have the farm aid. We used to do a significant amount.
But if you look at it, Japan, the people, of course, they use China as an example. Say, China do this, do that. So China developed so fast.
Right.
Which it is indeed
true.
very, very fast.
Yeah.
But Japan did the same thing. Just look at it for past 50 years, what happened with Japan. Japan has whatever China do, China actually learn from Japan.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, you're Asian, Michael grew up in that environment. You have a Japanese aunt working for Mitsui. Actually, everything China does is they're copying what Japan does.
Right.
In the beginning, they do
Scaling it,
export. Oh,
right?
they export. And the second, industrial policy. I want this industry to develop in the next 5 years. And I want that industry to develop in the next 5 years. And the subsidize are crazy. And then the bankings, and then the financing, everything the government provide. And then afterwards, the industrial coordination is a lot of government involvement. So, but you just look at Japan. After 50 years, still way behind America.
So you don't think that that's going to be a deterrent from us, and it should be something that we encourage and engage, as long as we stay competitive and we have the workforce, the development that happens surrounding it.
My feeling is that we should not be worried too much about the so-called developing countries catching up. BRIC. I think we should put our hands on our heart to ask. Countries like China, the per capita GDP today is only 1/5 of United States.
Right.
People of Brazil, the per capita income is about 1/5 or 1/4 of the United States. People in Czechoslovakia, oh, no, I'm sorry, I don't want to use Czechoslovakia. People of Russia, right? Maybe about 1/4 of the United States. These BRIC countries, are they so stupid? Are they so stupid? Their per capita income should only remain 1/4, 1/5 like us. Right? So their success may not be because their system is better or they cheated or whatever. Their system, because in the past, the system is so tilted, so that uneven. So that now we just open up a little bit when they to catch up. So maybe when China catch up to half of us, they may stop. When Brazil may catch us, half of us may stop. But that is still a long way to go. Of course, we will feel threatened because if China is half, per capita is half of us, they're already 3 times bigger than us.
I was going to say the billion people. I mean, the population that's there in of itself.
But we should not look at it as say, oh, that is a system. They have a superior system. I don't think so. I think our system is still probably the best. That we should not almost try to stop the confrontation by saying that if we compete, United States, we should have the confidence to say, I can win. I don't have to clip your knees. I can just compete with yourself.
Actually win, right?
I actually win. By doing so, I will clip your knees. I put some sand, put some of the oil, put on your in front of the road. That's not the smart thing to do. We should have a self-confidence. We are open society. Every day this nation attract the smartest people to this country. We should have an open door policy saying that I welcome everybody have ambition. Everyone seeking for freedom to come to this country. Then we will win, hands down.
If that sense of liberty and that sense of availability and better life standards it remains, and that's changing.
As an immigrant, to the final thought of this that brief conversation.
For sure.
As an immigrant, I came to this country from Hong Kong 60 years ago. People have the perception, a lot of immigrants come to this country for economic reasons, legally or illegally. To be honest, and you know our family background, we come from quite affluent families, but we come to this country because if you feel free, believe me, when 60 years ago, that we had a decent life in Hong Kong. When I arrived in America, I feel like I'm in heaven. It's the air of freedom, and the each have opportunity, and the people are so kind and generous. It's so welcoming, and all my friends, many of them come not out of poverty, come as a graduate student, choose to stay in America because America make us feel free. I hope this spirit can continue prevail in the United States. That's my end of it.
Excellent. Well, Dad, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us to share your thoughts and perspective on global politics, globalization, import tariffs, and what the opportunities are for us to be able to move forward.
Yeah.
So I love you very much. Thank you so much.
God bless America.
God bless America.